Hi everyone, my name is Rula Kaliouby and I'm a friend of Consoleya's. I'm very happy to be here today emceeing. This is my first time to MC, so please be kind to me. Yeah. Thanks. I'd like to start by welcoming everyone to Consoleya. It's a place that's very dear to my heart. I think it brings something very unique to Egypt. And I'm very happy to be with a lot of women and a lot of men here today, actually, which is quite awesome. So an interesting story. I've been working in communications and consultancy for 15 years, and then quite recently, I moved from the government to open my own business in consultancy. And I was completely disconnected from the entire entrepreneurship startup business. I used to mentor some people in Flat 6 Labs, but I was very, very new to this ecosystem, and it was quite difficult for me, I think, at the very beginning, because it's such a lonely journey to do this on my own for Masr. Across my journey, I think I met a lot of great people, Minoush and Amal, one of them, actually, and I have interesting stories to share with each one of you. But I wanted to start because I sat with you a couple of months ago and you were very, very passionate about the vision, mission of Mezzan Investments. But it was really the first time I got very much connected to what is gender smart investments. So let's start with that because we sometimes get lost in the big words. And so let's start with really what is the core and why is Mezzan Investments thinking and looking at this right now?
Okay, so basically gender smart investment or gender lens investment, the definition of it is investing with a financial return, because sometimes people get confused. Just as Ola said, financial return is also very important, but investing with gender targets and gender parameters in place. The term was coined in 2009 by Jackie Vanderberg and Joy Anderson. And they defined it to address an emerging concept that several gender equity leaders were starting to look into investing with a gender perspective. In 2019, the CDC and the IFC issued the investing guidelines for investors and fund managers to define exactly what is considered a gender smart or a gender lens investment. And they had 5 broad definitions, which is investing in companies that have a female in their ownership and in the leadership, investing in companies that are committed to a work-inclusive environment and space, investing in companies that are also committed to a gender-inclusive value chain, companies that design and produce products and services that cater to women and their women's needs. And then the final one, which is possibly the most general one, companies with leadership that are committed not to harm women in the community. I mean, I think that gender lens investment goes beyond just supporting female-led companies. Of course, it's extremely important to support female-led companies, just as Ola said, but from my perspective, it's actually making every company gender-friendly. So women can have a career path, retention. Women in Egypt represent 50% of the graduates. They represent 23% of the workforce. So there's a huge disconnect. Women are unable to find jobs. They're asked also in interviews even very, very odd questions. So every company can become a gender-friendly when, hopefully, when they follow whether the approach that Mezzan is doing or Lotus Capital or some of the other work here.
Hany, I have a question for you. You actually said something very nice when we were having the briefing call the other day, and you said, I don't like the word gender. And I thought that was awesome, and I'm like, you're absolutely right, I don't like the word gender either. But I want to touch base on why you don't like the word gender, and how can you, through all the work that you're doing, tackle the disparities that are actually happening. So all I was saying, we have one of the highest gender gaps in the Middle East and North Africa. What are you doing really to tackle such disparities, starting from the fund management team and onwards from there? But let's start from gender.
Okay, maybe I should just say who I am first, so I put things in context. So I co-manage emerging markets fund of funds. Co is very important because my partner is a woman, so that's very important. And we are 50-50 women, men in the team. And we want to maintain that right throughout our growth. That's important. So we invest across all emerging markets in VC and PE. So I basically invest in the funds that invest in the company. So I'm one level higher in terms of money coming out. So just to start with, I'll give you some numbers because Ola mentioned it. Do you know how much is invested today in the world? How much money is in the investment world? Is about $69 trillion. So $69 trillion, who manages this money? 98.7% are men. 98.7% are men. That's across the world, okay? I'm talking about not Middle East, not Egypt, that's across the world. So obviously there is a bias. So why don't I like the word gender? And by the way, I sit on many advisory boards and committees that are called gender this and gender that, so I'm not against it, I just don't like it. The reason is we're focusing on women. It's not, gender can be, nowadays there's more than two, so I'm not going to get into that part. So I'm not going to get, but it is focused on women, that's what we want. But if you say women lens investing, that doesn't sound right. So people kind of came up with this gender lens to cover it. So what do I do? So for years I've been following this, and I have to say it comes from my mother. So it's always come from somewhere, right? So it's my mother. Wafa knows my mother well enough to say that the influence has been there forever. And I grew up with that. So it was something for me that's very natural. It's not something imposed on myself. So when I worked for many years at IFC and managed investments all over the world. And every time I hired many, many people. And I had a bias to hire women. Why? Because first, I found them to be better performers than the men. That's for sure. But because there was also a bias in IFC, so the bias in IFC was always to hire men in the old days, and then they shifted. Now they're hiring more women, as we well know from the strategy of IFC. But what's important is, why is there a difference between women and men in business? I'm talking about business. I'm going to give you the business logic that I follow. Men were designed several 100,000 years ago, maybe millions of years ago, to hunt. That's what and that DNA is still in us. We are focused, we need to get to that goal. Women have been designed, and I'm generalizing, and I like to generalize so that can shock as opposed to make it nice and politically correct and all that. So women are designed to look all around and worry about all kinds of things happening, kids and house and food and everything. And it is this, let's say, this lateral view of the world, a lateral view of things that actually add to the focus. So you cannot have focus without everything around it. So you need to have both. It's not one or the other. I mean, all women or all men teams don't work. It's not either or. It's actually a combination of both, because we have to think that way. So I'll give you an example. So we invest in people. It's not at all true we invest in funds, and we invest in people first and foremost. So when I'm looking at a fund manager team, okay, and I see them all men, this is 90-something% of the managers we see are men, okay? I can give you the numbers, the exact numbers if you want, right? What do I tell them? You are way too monochrome for me to invest with you. I don't like monochrome, I like colors, right? So they kind of tell me, how can we be monochrome? Look, we come from all these different universities and have all these backgrounds. But no, you always think this way. We need more diversity in thinking. So when we get over the shock of that monochrome business, they start realizing that actually when they change the composition of their team, and IFC did a study in 8th of March 2019, it was published, am I right in that date? That shows that if you invest in more diverse fund management teams, the performance of that fund goes up by 20%. That's not insignificant. That's 20% higher than if you have an all-men team, okay? So we're looking at it from a business perspective. We're saying it is better to have a team that has more women in it, So why is it important to have more women in the investment team? Because exactly as Ola said, they look at women-led businesses and women serving businesses in a very different way. So I'm just going to come to the, so decision-making today has to be a combination of both, because the world is very complex, and we are creating, innovation creates businesses that are transformational. And transformational now is across all sectors of the economy. It's no more, making shoes or, making cement or otherwise. It's everything has a business in it, whether it's healthcare or education or you name it, everything. So transformation means we're transforming the world for a better future. Better future includes caring for our earth. Okay, we have to keep that in mind. So there is this caring element, and there is also how we think about, taking care of everything else. Women have that innate in them, this caring and this thinking, and I have seen exactly what Ola said. I've seen women presenting to me, and they are very conservative, and they will give you exactly what they are going to do. Men, they'll give you 100% more than women tell you for the same exact business. So I tell them these are two different, this is the same business, two different stories, and this is because they're looking at it very differently, right? So just keeping that in mind. We are in innovation. Innovation cannot be done with one or without the other. That's very important. And then I'm going to come to decision making very quickly, and then I'm passing on. So decision making. If investments right now is 98% made by men, right? So who makes the decisions in this world? So who makes decisions on purchases of anything, right? Where is the woman in that decision making? So, as I have been reminded in my big fat Greek wedding, the quote was, the man is the head and the woman is the neck, but the neck controls the head. Wherever the head goes is the neck that makes it go, right? So I asked a friend of mine, who makes decision in your, a male friend of mine, who makes decision in your home, okay? He says, I make all the important decisions and my wife makes all the other decisions. So I told him, okay, let's start from the beginning. Who made decision that you go out? He said, my wife did. Who made decision to get married? My wife did. Who made decision on purchasing the house? She did. So, and then who makes decision on when to have kids and where the kids go to school and all that? Oh, my wife did. So I told him, what important decisions have you made? So he tells me, I haven't encountered one yet. So it's important to think that women have a huge role in decision making, and if we don't know how they make decisions, we cannot be good investors. So you have to have that combination so that we can make good investments and promote those businesses that are going to be transformational as we go through the world that we're in. That's it for me.
So when you said it all.
Amazing, thank you very much. I actually think it's a very exciting time for a woman after a very long time. It's a well-deserved recognition for all the women out there. And I think, like you said, Hany, it's very important to look at it. It doesn't just sound nice, it now makes sense business-wise, right? So the impact of female founders and female-led businesses is now actually, affecting the bottom line, which is why people are concentrating and tuning in. I'd like to go to Amal. Again, I have a very interesting story with you. When I founded Intuition, you got in touch and we met up. We've spoken a couple of years earlier, but we met up, and you were telling me about Lotus Capital. And I remember we were discussing our fears and anxieties going forward, and you said, I've been getting a lot of calls that said, why are you really focusing on just gender? Why aren't you opening this up to, environment and sustainability, etc.? But you stuck to Lotus Capital becoming just concentrated on gender-smart investments. So tell us more on the why. Why did you do this, and why are you keeping your belief and your thoughts? So,
I just really hope we got this, what he said on camera, because I have to listen to it every morning and say, this is the why, this is the why. We need this constant reminder of why we're on this journey, and thank you for that. I think I take a step back when I think of why I embarked on this journey, and now I don't use the words. I learned a new word, the Rula, that we use instead of anxiety or fears. It's called excitement. I'm excited. I'm not anxious. And I tell female founders that. I'm like, no, if you're excited, let's change that mindset. And what got me excited about this journey
closer to it.
What got me, oh, this is better. What got me excited about this journey is definitely seeing the gap that Ola mentioned, across VC, having been working more and more on venture, sort of seeing the systematic bias within venture. And I think it is leading us to missed opportunities. And in terms of, just what Ola mentioned on the questions getting asked, how we conduct due diligence, how we view commitment of female founders to their businesses. But really more so, it was about access to markets for women. So, I think of some of the, just in terms of all the capital that we're seeing going into venture today. So Africa crossed 5 billion in venture funding in 2021, and Egypt was over $500 million of that. When you think of how much growth is happening in the technology sector, but how many women are actually working in this sector, this is what I feel is a real missed opportunity. So I think back to Minoush's point in terms of when thinking about gender smart or gender lens investing, it's not just female founders not getting access to funding, but also women not getting opportunities of these companies that are growing really fast, that now need CFOs with really good financial experience managing their growth, need more CTOs and engineers, and really customers. I mean, when you think of the participation as a whole and how many of the women population are benefiting from the growth in the technology sector, I felt that it was at a disadvantage because two things. One is how the VCs are focused, yes, on the male founders who are ambitious and put this grand vision and in front of the investors, and this is what gets the excitement and the momentum, and it's a market that really does operate on momentum, versus women are much more conservative in terms of how they display their vision or their business plan, and sometimes an investor will tell them, oh, you're too early stage. They'll come back a year later because that investor said too early stage, versus a male founder will be emailing you every month with I got a new customers. Tell me when you reach 1,000 customers. Tell me when you reach X revenues. But he would be like, I made $1,000 this week. Like, great. Why are you emailing me about this all the time? But they're very aggressive and very, not aggressive, they're very ambitious. Ambitious. Careful choice of word. And you don't see that as much. So a big part of what we work with the female founders on these pain points is how they fundraise, how they negotiate, a lot of coaching, which you and I have been had a lot of conversations around in terms of how to really add value in the changing mindsets, changing the conversation and how they communicate with investors. But more so also tapping into more women talent to join startups. So showing them the opportunities at these companies and saying, look at how their stage of growth, how much they're growing now. They're able to, they're not as risky as we thought. You don't have to be working for a bank. You can be actually working at one of the companies that have now raised their Series B or onto their Series C. We need more women talent. And I think this is extremely important because of how the products get designed and what products are available to the market today. And especially, I think, when you look at how much funding went to fintech, I speak to a lot of fintech founders, and I'm really surprised by how many women customers they have. It's less than 20% at times. When you look at microfinance, and the growth of microfinance was on the back of women customers because of their repayment rates, it's just good for the bottom line. It's just something I learned from Nada. Banking on women is just good for the bottom line. And this is the opportunity that we're trying to show to the founders as well and their management teams, that this is why it's important to have women on boards. It's important to have more women in management, and be more inclusive to get better products, to make it a much more inclusive system, inclusive ecosystem, and that drives real innovation and that's sustainable.
Thank you. My sister is a female entrepreneur, and she's in the tech business. And I remember 18 years ago when she started Affectiva, which is her emotion AI company based in Boston. She used to go around trying to fundraise, and there were two female founders, and Rana was a mother at the time, and she would walk into a fundraiser and introduce what emotional artificial intelligence is, and then they're like, what technology and emotional, and two women were completely not interested in this story, and it was very, very hard for her to actually convince investors that this is technology and has nothing to do with emotions, right? It's just trying to make computers more intelligent. I think this type of bias, and I think Tamer touched upon this before, there is this type of discrimination that just happens because you don't have enough data to support your decision making. So like Ola and Amal and Hany were saying, actually, and Minoush as well, you depend on prerequisite ideas, and we tend to believe and trust those things that are more relevant to us. And obviously, if great work worked great previously, it's easier for me to go ahead and do that. So for venture capitalists, how do you try to eliminate this type of bias and discrimination? And what do you do in the process in order to make it more efficient and optimized to remove this type of bias?
Yeah, so one of the best ways to describe this problem is I'll tell you a story of a friend of mine who's a female founder in the US, right? So she was visiting Cairo recently, and her also female co-founder are setting up a computer vision, a company that uses computer vision to help monitor their performance very quickly. No. So the kids, it's actually meant for kids, and they sort of play these games by filming themselves, and they can then improve their performance and become better football players, right? So she's been trying to raise, in the US, $400,000 for 2.5 years, right? So that's crazy. Yeah. People here raise $400,000 in no time, right? Yeah, exactly. So the point here is that if you're a female founder and you've been trying to raise $400,000 for the last 2.5 years, you are way behind your cohort, right? So this is a 10K marathon. Each K is a year, and you start with a cohort of peers, and then you actually start a whole 2.5K behind your peers, right? So if you miss your first round, if you can't get past the initial gate, you're already going to be walking with a handicap for the rest 9K, right? So if we can fix the first part of the process, then we would be eliminating a huge part of the problem. So what's the first part of the problem is that at the pre-seed stage, what am I actually investing in, right? There's no data. You're lucky if you have an MVP, right? Maybe there's a product, it's a bit wonky, not necessarily fully functioning, right? So I'm investing most of the time based on my own personal biases. So in the keynote speech, we were talking about if you talk like me, sound like me, look like me, I'll give you money, right? So as a VC, we need to be intentionally aware of our own biases, especially at the pre-seed stage, because that's when the handicap starts, and then it becomes virtually impossible to catch up, right? So if I can make intentionally non-biased decisions and look at the same way at companies, almost like these experiments they used to run way back when they send CVs with all male names for women. So it's the same idea. If I can get past my initial bias and think about what I'm doing here, we can actually, all of us, solve this problem much earlier or at the onset, right? So just to focus on, in the absence of data, to invest away from my biases. That, I think, will have a tremendous initial impact on the handicap that could last the better part of a decade.
Thank you. My next question is to Minoush. Again, embarking on your passion for this, I want you to let us know, why is this the right time to invest in women? And I think, again, why is this the right time to invest in Egypt, and why is this the right time to invest in women in Egypt?
Okay, so if you're going to invest in Egypt, you have to invest in women. So this is, I think it's a given. Absolutely. So I actually think that it's always a good time to invest in women, but the conditions are much better now. The conditions are much better for so many reasons. I think Egypt's commitment to gender equity is increasing. The entire MENA region's commitment to gender equity is increasing. The world as a whole is starting to realize the business case for investing in women. And this is why gender lens and gender smart investing as funds and as angel networks is starting to emerge. We are the region with the highest gender gap in the world. It seems on the outside that we are performing better, but we're performing better in terms of, I mean, we have more female ministers, we have more appointed members of parliament, but on the economic participation, we're very much lagging behind. I think we've moved just 3 notches on the World Economic Forum Gender Gap Index. We're at 129. It will take us 145 years to close the gender gap in Egypt versus the rest of the world. Gender lens funds that are looking at the MENA region are just representing 5% of 4.8 billion funds that can, I mean, define themselves as funds with a gender angle. I think we're the first private equity fund that's committed to gender lens investing in the region. Amal is probably the first venture capital as well. I don't like the term first. I think it's not important to be the first. It's important to be consistent and to be the best. That's more or less, I mean, we always like the term the biggest, the tallest, the first, everything. It doesn't matter. It's what you're going to do about it that really counts and matters. Why am I passionate about this? I think, I mean, I started as an investment banker. It's a completely male-dominated world, and I moved, when I started here, I moved to London I won't tell you when, doesn't matter, very long time ago. And I thought that, I mean, this is London, it was the financial center of Europe, and this is the place for a female investment banker to be. And I spent a year being asked to sign the courier because they thought I was a secretary, and it's impossible that I would be an investment banker sitting around with all of these men. And I got over it, it's fine. But it's things like that, and wherever I meet women, whether women in the financial services world, female founders, I think it's more or less the same story. In New York, in London, in Cairo, in Dubai, they all have similar stories and similar kinds of encounters. It's just women should support each other. They should, because the business case is there. We just need to start showing it more to companies. This morning we were talking with some people that we're hiring in the team, and they didn't even know that companies perform better if they have more women on boards, if they have more women in senior managements. They're more profitable. They have higher return on equity. Their market capitalization and the volatility of their share price, if their listed company is less. They have less sanctions by the regulatory authorities. They have less corruption. If the HR manager is a woman, there's a higher retention in the companies. These numbers and this data we have to keep reiterating and mentioning them because the business case is there. People just need to see it for themselves. And this is I think, what we're hoping and we're planning to do with Mezzan.
My question's to you, Hany. So the business case is there. We're all convinced that there is impact. What is your advice to investors when they're looking at female-founded startups on what it is that they need to see and go against their personal bias, like we're saying, in order to give them that vouch of confidence and the right path to growth?
So I just have very few things to say around that but they're very important. One is there is a problem of listening. We don't listen well. So when we are assessing women and that women don't talk in the language we understand as men, we kind of don't listen. And so it's the ability to listen well is the one thing. But the advice to women in business, and especially in the finance or investment business, is don't become men in the way you do present yourself and even think. I mean, I've seen that so often, and I say, why? That's a waste. You know, be yourself as a woman, and you're going to shine. And the other thing is, make sure you have. For me, I'm always having my women colleagues when we're assessing teams, because they see things that I don't even see. And I'm supposed to be a guy who listens, right? So it's a matter of, there are certain things that you have to feel in people. So it's how we assess them is, don't use the traditional lens of, you know, you have to pass this checklist and all of these things, which university you went to, and, you know, what did you do and what's your career. Listen well and do understand what the business concept is and what are we trying to do. And again, I'm going to repeat myself. Do not take the form of men when you are presenting or when you are actually managing a company. Don't put a suit with a tie, it doesn't suit, right? It's just be yourselves and make sure you articulate that as you present. That to me is so important.
I'll make sure I do that. I hope so. We'll see tomorrow. حاسة عايزة أشوف أنا بعمل إيه في المكتب بكرة الصبح, you know? So I'm gonna see that tomorrow morning. Again, to you, we've been coaching each other, I think, for a while now. And I remember, again, we were excited, and I was going through a little bit of some excitement during the first couple of months of Intuition. And you called me up like 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, and you're like, oh, I have this fabulous book. It's about unlocking your genius, so I'm going to give it to you. And you passed by me, and I took the book from you. I think there's a very important role to support other women in the field, and I think I'm very lucky to be surrounded by such women. But if we go outside of Cairo, I think this support system starts declining as we go further and further. So in your opinion, because again, you've been in this field for quite some time, how can we extend our support network to beyond, you know, the vicinity of Cairo, as an example?
I think it really comes to being appreciating what you have and embracing curiosity. I think I was extremely fortunate throughout my career to have actually, you know, very supportive women in terms of, you know, former bosses, people I've worked with, and mentors who've advised me along the way. There was true camaraderie in that way, and it inspired me to, or always, you know, gave me the sentiment to want to give back to. And I remember Karima and I once driving a few months ago all the way out to Mansoura University to give a talk there, and it was such a, I mean, it was such a difficult trip to make. It was like, it took us 4 hours to get there, to do a 2-hour talk. But that was a curiosity mindset. That was, you know, we've been so privileged being in Cairo, having the education we've had, having such great mentors and supporters and bosses that have really enabled the careers that we have today. And we can't sit in echo chambers all the time, just, you know, enjoying these privileges and not trying to see what's out there and outside of Cairo and what can we do. And it was such a great experience when we went there and we talked to the students and, you know, had more conversations about entrepreneurship and what they can do. And there's such great talent. And when, you know, we're seeing a lot of startups being constrained by lack of access to talent, and, you know, at the pace of growth that we're witnessing today, the scarcity of talent is a real issue. I think Tamer and I are always trying to, do you have a CFO for this? Do you have a CTO for that guy? We need more engineers here. And without going out and meeting more universities in Asyut and Mansoura, in other jurisdictions, that's a fun thing, in other governorates, to enable that and be curious and listen when we go to these spaces. It's not just about, you know, being in and out and just giving a talk and, you know, here's my speech and call me if you need anything. I probably won't answer, you know, the email until 3 months later. But we really spend time to just listen to the people and get to know, you know, what is their impression of entrepreneurship? What is the, you know, what is the risks? What are some of the solutions that can come from there? Because when you think more broadly, I love the example that Hany gave earlier about who's making the decision. Definitely it's the women, and there are more decisions being made outside of Cairo too. Like when you look at how much wealth is outside of Cairo in terms of angel investing, in terms of other pools of liquidity and local liquidity outside of these governorates, to mobilize that, you have to go out and be curious and listen and be inspired by more solutions. Therefore, the growth of these companies and the growth of the investment landscape at large in Egypt, because these are also people that are making very important decisions. And starting with just learning about them is very important, and then you'll be able to give back in a more meaningful way.
Can I make a comment on, because this is brilliant. I mean, I love this. So one is that finance, and I'm talking about private equity and venture capital and angel investments, is the most democratizing process we have because it provides money to those who have good ideas, good businesses that cannot afford to do it. So when you go to a village and you know this person doesn't have the money and you find a great idea and then you are supporting that, you are actually democratizing the whole process. You're going to have much greater innovation because they're going to find solutions that fit that particular environment that we sitting in Cairo or wherever will never figure out. So that's number one. But I'm going to tell you a lesson I learned when I was dealing with indigenous people in Canada. I was trying to do a project of bringing indigenous people in finance again, between Canada and Central America. And I went there with a colleague of mine who was half indigenous. And the first meeting is they did not talk about business whatsoever. They spent half a day just knowing each other. They didn't even give me their business card or anything. I had no idea who they are. We just sat there and getting to know each other. That's how the indigenous people do it. They need to connect first, and then the last 2 hours of an entire day, they start talking about business. I said, I have learned something. I need to know the person first and get to know them, really know them, before I talk about business. So when you go to a village, they will never know how to present to you a business case. Listen to them, we listen to them well, and then at the end you say, you can do this business this way or that way. So just turning it around makes a huge difference, but you have to have a lot of patience and a lot of listening in the process.
A lot of curiosity, I think, right? So curiosity, patience, and listening for sure. I have an idea, Hanan. Why don't we do like a Consoleya Women Meetup Roadshow and move around a little bit outside of Cairo? Yeah, let's do that. Let's get all of these fabulous women on board and do it. Yeah. Yalla been.
Hany has to be there also.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Tamer, my question to you, you started your career in policy making, and I want to touch base a little bit on the role of government and policymakers in increasing gender-smart investments. Let us know your take on that. I think in Shorooq Partners as well, do you work a lot with government into kind of shaping the business environment? Is there, do you see hope going forward in this country? Let's hear it from you.
I definitely I did not see this one coming, but let's definitely talk about government
this
policy.
Is not, we will edit,
this
we
is super
will
up my
edit
alley.
out this question from the live.
Okay, so policy is one of the most powerful yet supremely distant levers that you can use to affect change, right? So when I worked in policy, I was just fresh out of undergrad, and some of the policies I designed in 2008 are coming into effect today, right? So that's the kind of cycle time of government policy, right? If we need to just go and do our own thing, right? So government will get there, and the role of government is tremendously important. But we need the policy needs to start at a much more fundamental level. So you start with education, and then this role in education evolves from sort of K-12 to redesigning curriculums to bring in innovation and entrepreneurship at an early stage. So early childhood education is immensely important. And the earlier, in policy in general, the earlier you design an intervention, the deeper the impact over an extended period of time, right? So you want to affect change through interventions as early as possible. So a great place to start could possibly be early childhood education, right? When it comes to later stage, so you want, for example, to incentivize venture capitalists to invest more in women, right? So these things are usually short-lived and not sustainable, right? Because it needs to be driven by the data. And even though the data's there, right, nobody's listening to it, which is really bizarre, right? But the data's there, right? Like, and it applies to female fund managers, female CEOs, female operators, and governance, right? So if I find a female-led fund manager and a female founder, and then I have good governance, if all else is equal, I get 40% higher returns. Just math, just straight up math, right? So a big part of this is to, like you said earlier, is to continue to drive that narrative over and over again. And that's actually one of the biggest lessons I learned in a career in policy. If you keep saying the exact same thing again and again and again and again and again and people will eventually listen, right? But you just have to keep repeating the same narrative and the same messaging over and over again. People will eventually listen. And that's how you actually affect major change at the policy level.
Love that. Great. I think I thank you all very much for a fantastic and very rich panel. I'd love to continue asking and digging deeper and going more personal, but I think I'll open the floor to some Q&A and engage with the audiences. If anyone has a question, just please raise your hand, and we have a mic that will be passed on to you. No one's curious at all to ask any. Oh, we have a question.
ممكن أكلم? Okay.
Yeah.
So sectors that you are looking to invest in or you think are prominent and up and coming, which have the potential to either have women who are, you can employ a lot of women, or you have certain companies that are women owned that can grow or that are at the startup stage. What are some of the sectors that you would identify right now that you would think we can work with? This is to benefit me actually, and something that I'm working on. And then just a comment, because I'm sitting next to a dear colleague, Manal Amin, who is one of the TIA Angel steering committee members. One of the problems we always find here is that, and although this audience of course speaks English, is that a lot of the information out there, a lot of the sessions out there are in English and not in Arabic. And reaching the target audience that you're looking for, the target group that you're looking for, we really need to work towards Arabizing and getting more and more of the information out there in Arabic.
100%.
So that's just as a comment as we think forward.
Yeah.
But thank you again for a great session.
Great, thank you. Sectors. Does anyone want to answer some of the sectors?
I don't want to say before Tamer is here to say so.
Let's start with Tamer, actually.
So honestly, I wouldn't go sector specific. I think tech in general, especially in Egypt, is a fantastic opportunity for women. First of all, there's tremendous flexibility in working hours and working locations. The culture is a bit different than other conventional sort of employment opportunities. There's a lot of engineering, which is a very, by nature and by design, sort of mathematically merit-based, right? You can't mess that up, right? So I think there's a tremendous opportunity for women in tech in this country. We know they perform better, both academically and professionally, right? And the tech ecosystem in maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years will be, maybe even less, will be as big as the Suez Canal, right? That represents a tremendous economic opportunity where there is almost an inherent bias towards women when it comes to employment, right? So it works better if we can actually make it happen, right? So I would actually look for expanding employment opportunities and targeting the tech sector in general, if that helps.
Great, thank you. Yeah. Minoush?
Yeah, so just as Tamer said, I don't think that we should go sector specific when we're talking about gender equity or women empowerment. But I think there are a couple of sectors that just are attractive for investment at the moment. And again, you can make these investments gender friendly, just as I said. Definitely food processing, financial services, fintech, tech-enabled companies, but I'm also, I think I'm very optimistic about some of the new disruptive industries, like for instance, edtech, clean energy, renewable, waste management. I mean, there's so much that still Egypt can do in all of these sectors, and definitely women can contribute, whether as founders, as part of the workforce, etc. And you just also look at, in general, when you do a mapping for an industry for Egypt, you look at the competitive advantage. So we always talk about the strategic location. There's a lot of room in logistics as well, and a lot of things that are linked to the logistics industry and also the tech-enabled part of logistic. I think personally that Egypt can do so much, and linking Egypt in specific with the African continent, because there's so much that can be done within Africa as well. So just in general. Great. And of course, invest in female fund managers, of course, and in angel networks, of course.
Great. If we, do you wanna?
So I just add one little thing, is that now work is exportable. I mean, so I'll give you an example. So we use an app called Upwork. I don't know if you've heard of it. And then when you look at this, there are a lot of women from all over the world on that, offering all kinds of services, online services, which means that you've now kind of democratized work across the world. It's no more by country or by location. So if you think beyond what it is right now, I mean, even languages, etc., just beyond what the location is, there is no limit to which sector you want to go for. And we don't think of sectors. We think of where the opportunity is, where is the innovation, and where is the business, where is the disruption that's happening. And then, but the innovation is very important, because disruption doesn't happen unless there's innovation. So how do you get the two together? And the innovation, by the way, is neither by gender, nor by income, nor by location, okay? So, or nor by education. So innovation is something that, people come up with ideas and you find them, and they're good ideas and they can be implemented. That's what you go for.
I would only add to that as you're thinking of which sectors do you want to go into, or which are growing to invest in or to work with, is something that Hany said earlier on of like, don't fit a mold. You don't have to be a man in a man's industry. Actually embrace your own genius. Embrace, right? So embrace your superpower kind of thing, which basically means, also the virtues of being in Egypt is like, most sectors are highly underserved. And if we have, financial services, they could be better. In healthcare, definitely could be better. So we're seeing a lot of opportunities in fintech, health tech, edtech, logistics and mobility. So I absolutely love, all these sectors very ripe for disruption, and it's really about what strengths you bring in, whether as an investor or as, as a leader in the sector, or an employee, or a customer, even driving better decision making by choosing the more inclusive product, or the product that is actually better designed, better suited to the household's needs. So I think economic participation across the value chain, and making better informed decisions, and embracing what's really meaningful and more value driven to you can lead to just better outcomes overall. And I think in Egypt, we're not at there's no shortage of problems to solve for. And I think there's also great talent to solve for it. So just embrace your talent and whichever you choose to solve for.
Yeah. Great. We have a question. Do we have the mic? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Noha, and I am with the WEN Network, Women in Entrepreneurship Network. We spoke about sectors, we spoke about bias, and I think if I'm a woman in Sohag or in Asyut or in somewhere, and I don't have connection to investors that are here in Cairo, what chances do I have if I have a good idea for the area where I live? Not a unicorn, but something that will place me in a much better place. It's a good idea. It will help the local area where I am, and it will employ other, hopefully, women, and women first and then men. What chances do I have to receive investment, to receive mentorship, to receive nurturing to grow my business?
Thank you. Yeah, there's the Consoleya Roadshow, but like, I will answer this before we give the floor to one of the speakers, but like Tamer was saying, it's all about creating that narrative, saying it again, making sure that it gets across the reach, you know, and then having the right framework and go-tos that we can start plugging in these women with, right? So it's a much bigger role than one entity. I think the entire ecosystem has a very big role to play, which is to make sure that that narrative of we're here to support you as a woman spreads across beyond Cairo to the governorates. And then you plug these with something like Tia Angels, right? And you do a lot of mentorship as well. You do a lot of sessions, you do a lot of webinars. So we start connecting these women with these entities to pass it on. That's the only way, I think, in my opinion, that it would work. It doesn't take one entity to do it.
My question is about the bias, about what Rula was saying is that we generally look at people that look like us, like that we understand what they're going to do, so we're interested in helping them. What if we don't understand, but they have a good narrative, they have a good opportunity? Are we as investors ready to take that leap of faith and chance and invest in such women? That is my question.
So I'll tell you the truth, but don't be mad at me, right? It is extremely unlikely that a woman from Sohag who has a hyper-local business, for her to raise venture capital money is not going to happen. It's not because she's a woman from Sohag, it's because her business is hyper-local. So hyper-local businesses don't scale to the point where, as a venture capitalist, I would make the return necessary for me to take that leap of faith, right? So if I'm building a hyper-local business, and that business will benefit my local community, this is exactly where you should go for microfinance, right? But make no mistake about it, venture capital is the purest form of capitalism, right? It is, and that's the truth, right? And if I tell you anything but that, then I'm kidding myself and you, right? So the financial returns, the scale, the speed of growth, and execution have to be there for me as a VC and for any other VC to invest, so long as my investors require that. So if I don't hit a specific return on my fund, I will be unemployed super fast. Right?
Can I add?
This is why he has shares in the microfinance company to hedge his bet, yeah. I know.
I'll just add to that both PE and VC investing are designed for fast-growing companies. That's what they are for. But there are many other forms of financing. One of them is microfinance. And there are bank loans and, you know, different types of finance. But if you take this 1% of companies that grow, and because there are very few in the economy, any economy in the world, very few companies actually are on the growth path. I can give you examples galore. I mean, if you look at all the stores around where we are right now, they don't want to grow more than that store. That just tells you that the number of companies out there that don't want to grow are far exceed those who grow. So we are designed, or our world is designed for that 1%. Why is that 1% important? Is because it leads the others. It kind of pulls the others up. So I mean, I'll give you an example, which is not a good example, but I'll give it to you. Many years ago, we decided as IFC to finance a Four-Seasons hotel in Prague. You say, where is the development impact, right? I mean, none, right? Well, the whole concept was you invest in one hotel, the whole hotel sector goes up in quality. And it's not just quality, it attracts a lot more tourists for the whole market. So the multiplier effect was huge. It was a small hotel. We never financed it at the end, but that's okay. The board kind of couldn't get over the fact that there's a Four Seasons hotel, you know, it's okay. But at least the concept was there. So the idea is that you're trying to find those leaders in a sector and then pull them up, and the whole sector will go up again. Innovation will draw the whole thing. So that's what we're designed for. We have our little role in the whole economy, so we don't go beyond that. So,
Tamer, you had your chance. No, I was going to say the example that I think is relevant to that in terms of thinking of companies that have, upscaled the entire sector. For me, it was Brimor. Brimor, when you think of the number of actually women merchants in Upper Egypt specifically, that were able to scale from just like operating one kiosk to scaling the number of customers they were reaching and how many more they employ. So it doesn't have to be the traditional thinking of, and VC is not traditional by any means, of like I need venture or private equity money to grow that business, but it could be, companies that are enabling access through other means. Another company was Thunder in terms of democratizing access to investing in the stock market and, now launching even more products to that. I loved one of their stories around one woman from Port Said who actually financed her children's college education because of some of the investments that she's made through Thunder. So this is the real, enabling access through different participation mechanisms that were not available before, and we don't have to think of the traditional, the only way to grow is have to raise angel money or VC money. You could be plugged into a bigger thing that really uplifts the entire sector.
One more question, or two?
أيوة.
Wow, okay. Oh, wow, we have 4 questions. 5 questions. هنقفل على حنان. هنقفل على حنان. Yeah. All right.
أنا عندي سؤال مختلف شوية. أنتوا قلتوا إنه المايكرو فاينانس is led by women and is very successful. Okay. وإن مفيش chance للwomen entrepreneur. أنتوا مش شايفين إن الاسبكتس a bit cultural؟ يعني معظم الناس واخدين مايكرو فاينانس عشان الومن في الليفل بتاع المايكرو فاينانس are basically women are the ones اللي بيعملوا الشغل وهم اللي بياخدوا الفاندز they have to عشان ما عندهمش اوبشن تاني. اما انا صراحه انا شايفه ان برضو on the upper level هما ما فيش a lot of women عشان not a lot of women actually do apply. يعني even if they do يعني I've been attending pitches and so on, no they don't do very few that are outstanding زي اي supply. فانا مش شايفه بايسنس قوي للدرجه دي، لان انا مش شايفه بول اتراكتيف للدرجه دي سو فار. انا بقول ده اللي بشوفه لاني وليه في بول في المايكرو فاينانس. That's my question.
Can I just make a clarification before we get into this really nice conversation? We didn't say that microfinance is led by women. But we did. Yes, right. But there's a lot of women that take microfinance for the specific business needs, right? This is what the point that was being made across the governorate, not, and this doesn't mean that there is not room for female entrepreneurs. I just want to make this clarification before we answer this question. The second thing is, I think Aula was saying that you just got 200 applicants. There is room and appetite for women entrepreneurs. So where is this coming from?
I believe there's no many women who comes up with ideas. Maybe they shy away. Maybe the social status, they raise children. And I don't believe the core problem is, honestly, biasness. There is biasness, I agree. But there is a very big culture aspect in this situation, not only biasness.
Minoush. Yeah, Minoush, we'll have Minoush answer.
حاجتين مش عارفه ارد بالعربي ولا بالانجليزي بس حاجتين. انا I think on the female entrepreneur side I think that, and I've seen it and I'm sure that Ola and everyone has seen it as well, I think that women in this part of the world have a sense of lack of entitlement to so many things, and they don't feel that they are entitled for the raise. They don't feel that they are entitled to go and pitch. And even if they do, they face so many things. And the stories are, على فكرة, it's everywhere. It's not only in the MENA region, بس MENA أكتر بكتير. لأنه women بيتربوا إنه you shouldn't outshine men. يعني قدرتهم to pitch أصلاً for their own business with startup and they can take the company to become a unicorn, I don't think they need to start believing in themselves first to be able to bring in investors that will believe in that. This is a whole thing that we need to address, and it will probably take some time. الجزء بتاع micro is a completely different asset class. دي ستات that don't have options. They cannot work, most of them. They didn't find work. They are women that have to take care of their families. معظمهم أصلاً بيصرف على الرجالة. They don't have any other option except to go to the micro-lending company, to borrow, to do the project. It's a completely different kind of, it's a social class completely different than the woman that is going to go and pitch to do a tech-enabled company or to start her own company. We cannot confuse both. I understand what you're saying, but again, coming to Tamer's point, that we need to start supporting women. We need to tell them, no, come and talk to us. We need to also start mentoring them. It's not easy, it's going to take some time, but we have to start.
I think you had a comment. Great. Yeah, Mike.
Hi, my name is Lubna. I'm an aspiring creative director of a luxury fashion brand. And I had a question in regards to the sector. As Mr. Hany mentioned, usually you are devoted more to the 1%. And then there's a snowball effect, which then you start mentoring these other people or you see them attracted towards it. With that being said, the luxury sector is basically the 1%. And in comparison to fintech companies, it's more of a slower growth rate because you do not want to dilute the value of the brand. So would this be something that you maybe would venture into, or you see that it has potential growth? What would be the criteria that you would venture into something like this? Is it just the vision and maybe there's a plan planned out? Or you are thinking more of, no, does this have a return on investment that's fast? So then, therefore, this would turn the growth rate even quicker for the brand itself. Thank you.
Hany?
So the speed of growth is important. I mean, that's what we do, is finding that speed of growth. That's very important. But it is not by sector. So I'm going to give you an example. So we as Avanz invested through one of our funds and co-invested with them in India in an online jewelry store, right? I thought it was, what's the development impact on that side, It was amazing. It was beyond, I could not even imagine a company like this would actually generate so much in. So what did they do? I'll give you an example of what they do. I mean, some people here know the story because I've repeated it so many times. They went around the country, the entire India. India, by the way, is larger than all of Africa combined. All 54 countries, India's larger, okay? And they went and said to young people all over the place, design any jewelry you want, based on your local culture, based on what you've got, the north or south of India are very different. And we will render it electronically. We'll make a render it, and we will create a CAD of it. And anybody that orders it on our website, that moment we will make it. And only then we will pay you money for your work, but you make a % of every single piece that's sold. What did they do? They democratized, again I used that word, design. It's blossomed. There's 9,000 pieces of jewelry on this website from all over India with all kinds of creativity. And they kind of said, people, you decide what you want, right? But beyond that, there's a lot more. There's multiple levels of, so they thought of it as, and another one that I have to tell you about, they basically guaranteed the return of the jewelry, which means that if you don't want the jewelry, even after a year, they'll take it back. On their website, they specify how much gold is in there and how much diamond and how much whatever it is. They tell you exactly how many milligrams of each thing on the website. Everybody can see it. I mean, you can go, it's called Blue Stone, check it out if you want, right? And they told them, we will buy it back at any point in time, guaranteed for the price of the market on this. And everybody in India knows the price of gold. So they are wearing their savings. And they tell you, this is the making charge. So you know how much you're paying for holding this piece of jewelry for how many months to enjoy it, to wear it and have it. and then you can use it as a savings instrument. What did they do? They moved the decision-making away from men and family and mother and sister and whatnot to the individuals, and created a saving instrument that's completely outside of the, the economy. Thinking like this, that's very creative, and that is very much in the fashion and design space. It is the creativity of how you change the business model of something that's really basic as jewelry, right, into a savings, into a choice, into decision-making the way you want, as opposed to somebody telling you must go to and buy this piece or that piece. Think of that way. That's the innovation we're looking for. Into development. It went, yeah. So in this jewelry, which is expensive jewelry, I'm not telling you it's not, I find it expensive. The people who are buying this jewelry are women who are 25 to 45 that are working all over India, that are in the lower middle income, not even in the high income, lower middle income. We know that from the statistics because this company tracks the phone number of the people. They know that's their account number is the phone number. They know what their income is. They know where they live. They know everything about them from their, their interaction with the site, to such an extent that they can. Anyway, I will not go. There's all kinds of details that they really thought about. That it just amazes me that this bunch of people, young people, figured it out and they applied it, and this thing has turned into a product that it goes way beyond the piece of jewelry itself.
And I would add to that, specifically on luxury, a short story that there was a Moroccan female founder who actually started it was a fast fashion jewelry company in New York, and her background is completely in finance, like Goldman Sachs, but what she really embraced was, again, back to what can I do differently? So it was a very differentiated distribution channel in terms of like the direct-to-consumer positioning, and again, they had something similar where you were able to exchange jewelry, so you get just a discount from whatever you purchased last, and you can return it, and they evaluate the gold and so on, and making fashion more accessible. And they had started, but sometime in end of 2018, early 2019, pandemic hits in 2020. They thought this company is, who's going to spend on fashion and luxury? But luxury was one of the categories that did very well during the pandemic because people are sitting in front of Zoom. Guess what women want to buy? They want to buy jewelry. They want to buy luxury products that they can, because you're not going out, you're not spending on anything else. So they were actually spending on luxury. Chanel, hiked their prices 3 times. So it's not really about whether this is just for the 1%, but how are you solving for it and scaling it? And what are you doing differently? How can you do it better to really scale and grow such so that people like Tamer want to invest? I'll invest anyway,
We have another question. We had a question on the, okay.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Aya Arif. I'm founder of Word. It's an edtech startup. I want to thank you so much for today. I was so excited to come with my child.
We're so happy you're here.
Thank you. So you were talking earlier about edtech, and it's a promising market. But from my perspective, it's a very difficult market. Because first, you are a female. It's a very hard industry, especially technology. The second thing is that we are working with education. So when you're talking about education, and especially elementary schools, you are targeting children. So children are not the buyers. You're selling to parents or to schools or to governments. So it's very difficult to sell. And when you go to investors, you need a lot of money because your products are very costly. So when you go to a VC, they refuse to pay you money because it's very promising and they like it very much and they are very passionate about it, but they say, no, you need an angel investor right now. So you have to go to an angel investor, and the angel investor will not pay the amount of money you want. So it's like a circle we are working through it. So what are your advices about it? Thank you so much.
Do you want to answer, Ola? Do you want to? I'll give you the floor to answer this. No? Okay. Any?
Amal?
Yeah.
Actually, I reference a company that Tamer and I have been both looking at closely, and I hate, actually, I wasn't a very big supporter of edtech generally. I think, we all have tried to take courses online. Raise your hand if you ever finished an online course. Thank you. You know, everyone's like, yeah, I can do this anytime. I'll learn VC. I'm gonna learn, you know, I'll do a degree in Egyptology, whatever you know, your bucket list item. But I'll do it online. No one does. And there was someone introduced me to a founder who's doing something in edtech, and he's like, you know, this is really different. I was like, yeah, how many times have I heard this before? This is really different. And then I get on the call and I told him, I'll try it. You know, I'm really biased already. Like, I don't, you know, I've looked at so many of people doing what you're doing. I can't see what the differentiation is. It's expensive. Retention is really difficult. Cost of acquisition is really difficult in the space. And just retention is really, really low. So you don't have a long, you know, the LTV of the customer or the long-term value of the customer is really low in this case. And then they really blew my mind with the content that they had. And it was really, really differentiated content. And guess why? Because they had 3 women on their team. Now, this is why it's really good to invest in women. And so it was very, you know, it was done very differently because they leaned into their backgrounds. They're not just, you know, they didn't just have a background in education because of the inclusivity of the team, people who worked a lot in philanthropy and like organizations where they you know, worked a lot with youth and how to maintain their attention and lean more into just the gaming industry of Egypt or globally, how much, you know, is happening in gaming and using better graphics, getting better designers to make it relevant and sticky, because who has the attention span that's more than 8 minutes? So they were very, you know, short videos that are very sticky. It made it better, and I was sold by the end of the call. I was like, you know, I usually try to play that I'm a strict person and, you know, I have my principles. I was like, you really, you know, had me overboard just from the first call. But it was very differentiated, and I think that's what you constantly have to go back to. Why are you the best person to solve for this problem? How are you solving for it differently? And leaning more into that rather than, you know, this is what the whole industry is doing. It is difficult and it's not very attractive to investors, and trying to, you know, to solve for the investors rather than actually solving for your real audience and why you are the better person to serve that audience.
Great. I think we have one more question, Hanan, and then we have to wrap up and close and go back to Bogak Homes. Yalla. Next question, and we'll have one answer. Okay.
Hi, my name is Mona Al-Khashin. I'm a founder of a tech-driven startup called Unlock. And I think on behalf, if there are any other female founders here, I think it's a great opportunity with all the brains and the minds in the room to actually get your insights. You've shared a lot of advice, and Ola did as well, for female investors and for people who want to support female-driven startups. But I would like to also hear your thoughts about any advice that you have for female founders as well at the beginning of their journey. You mentioned mindset, which is great, and, you know, embracing your superpowers and all that. I love all that, but also if you've got any practical advice for female founders who are at the beginning of their journey, I would love to hear that. Thank you.
Okay, we'll hear from everyone actually on this, but just a minute, very quick on it. Tamer, what's your advice to female founders? Run.
So if I was in your position, I know I'm starting with a handicap, right? So my peers will be coming in with, maybe at the pre-seed stage or in the early stage, they'll be coming in with a product, and probably that's about it, right? So I wouldn't fully go to market until and I know this sounds like I'm asking you to do more with less, right? I recognize the problem, right? But I can also only see it as the only way to game the situation, right? I wouldn't fully go to market with my product. I would close a very small round, very sort of quickly and quietly with a small group of people or angels or friends or family, and I would get over that handicap and position myself still as pre-seed. Right? So instead of trying to go and raise that $400,000 or $500,000 round, go raise 50 and do that extra 20% to put you ahead of your peers. It is asking you to do more, but it's the only way I can think of to kind of game the process a little bit, maybe.
Amal?
How is this the last question. I feel like we.
This is
start with that and spend another hour.
Yeah. This is the last. This is the one before the last question.
Just have so much to say, but I think it starts with getting very brutally honest about what you can do and what you can't do, and then build a village around that. So you get very confident in what you know, and inspire that confidence in others and build a village around that, because these are the people who will support you, promote you, open access and endorse to you, including the people like the Tamer was saying, close a small round, angel investors, getting more women, supporters and promoters for companies. These are your ambassadors, great team members. It takes a village, right, to really grow and scale. And then building competence throughout. I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of bias towards female founders. It's just a reality. Be over-prepared. Go the extra mile. Be super prepared, right, in terms of like thinking about it. But that doesn't mean be conservative. Don't be too late to go to market. Actually go over-prepared, ask the questions, get as much support as you can, but go to market fast, because that's where the real learning happens. You don't want to wait. I need to be operational for at least a year or hit my revenue milestones first before talking to the investors, because guess what? You'll talk to them and they'll ask for more. And they'll be like, oh, but you're not ready yet because you didn't do X, Y, and Z. Talk to them early, see what they were looking for. More importantly, talk to your customers, right? Like, actually, these are the people that you really are proving something for and proving a business for, and realizing whether there's an opportunity there. But lastly, just be very confident.
Great. Hany?
So I'll tell you what I'll tell fund managers. Same applies, because I deal with fund managers most of the time. So you get to know your customers really well because you're serving your customers. But you're going to be fundraising. You need to know who are your investors and what do they look for. And it's not that you're changing your business model or anything. It's just how you articulate your business on what they're expecting, because we all have mandates. We say, this is our strategy, this is what we're trying to do. And if you understand whose strategy covers what, you'll be targeting the right ones. So come to events like this and talk to the angel investors, talk to the VCs. Let them tell you, instead of you telling them what you're pitching, let them tell you what are they looking for and what are their businesses tick them. And then you start figuring it out. Design the thing that makes sense, not changing your business. I'm not saying that. It's just how you understand your investors is as important as understanding who your customers are.
It's articulating, I think, what to say when you're saying it to the different fund managers, etc., or investors.
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's a conversation, so it needs to be,
exactly.
you need to understand who you're talking to.
Minoush.
So everything has been said, but I think I'm going to give you a couple of statements rather than just general advice. I think the first one is you are the director of your own story. It will take you a very long time to realize it, but you are. The second thing is that I think that you need to think through everything. So, and one of the best advices that were given to me very early on in my career is that I keep a journal of the business mistakes that I did. And once you write them down, you will never do them again. The third thing is intuition. Women have a lot of intuition, and intuition is extremely underrated in business. I think it's one of the most important things in business and when investing. The numbers can make perfect sense. It is. I mean, I think we spoke about that. So the numbers can make perfect sense. The business case, the investment case is there. If you have an uneasy feeling about anything, follow it. And don't let the men tell you, stop it, because 100% of the time, you will end up being right about it. And then I think the final thing is just believe in yourself, believe in yourself, believe in yourself. And one more thing, you are a leader and not only a manager. And there's a huge difference. You're a female founder. Lead people, not only manage them.
I love this. I took notes. This is awesome. Thank you. Hanan, we end with you.
Let's end this aspiration.
That is awesome.
My question was,
No, my question, because I come from an era, I totally agree with Rula that we're living a golden era for women. It's finally happening. And yeah, I lived in an era where I have to watch the football match if I'm coming to a meeting so that I can blend with the people around me. So it's part of it, you mentioned the gender-friendly rules of the companies and the sources that you invest in. So I was curious, would you turn down an opportunity because it's not a gender-friendly rules? Is this a reality? Would you do that?
I think it doesn't matter where the company is. The only thing that is important, where the company wants to go with us. So if it's willing to be committed, if it's going to commit to gender equity and women empowerment, we are definitely willing to go down that road with it.
So for me, I invest in funds, right? If I see all men, I put a condition that they have to have women, right? And if they say no, I say, thank you very much, I won't invest. Very clear. It's not even in between, it's a very clear.
You're not going to invest in a lot of funds in Egypt.
Yeah, but it is the condition. It's a condition. I mean, I tell them this is what you have to do. If you want the money, that's what you have to do. I mean, today, yeah, I have this conversation every single day. It's not something one in a. So the best thing that we can do as investors is to make sure that every single investor asks the question. If every single investor asks the question or says, where are the women in your team? That will change the market. One question.
That's, you want to say?
I think it's really curiosity and assessing actions, not just commitments. So we've invested in completely male-founded companies, but we asked them very early on in due diligence about the number of customers, the whys. We actually interview the customers and see how this is, how this product has been better than the others and why they choose to stay on these platforms or work with these companies that similar to their providers. And asking these questions have made the companies more focused on that. Or like, okay, women, we have higher retention rates with women customers. How can we serve them better? And actually they've altered their products to suit that. But these were the actions that made us see that they are committed to making it an inclusive company. So, you can always say, yes, we're targeting women and we think 50% of our customers are women and we will do that. We will do that is not enough of a demonstration of willingness and that we are actually values aligned. Values aligned shows by the actions that you're taking, and I think we enable that with asking those questions. It's just a curiosity: are we aligned on values? And then, do we see the company growing? Do you believe in inclusion? And this is how you're demonstrating it, because it's good for your bottom line and it's good for your social impact that you want to actually bring into the world as well.
I think it's time to say good night. I really think so. Thank you so much for joining. It was an absolute pleasure. Loved being with all of you. And thank you, Consoleya. Thank you very much.